Welcome back to Sunrise Daily World. This morning we've got Professor Martin Uhomoibhi here with us. He's also former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former Undersecretary General, UN President at UN Human Rights Council, among several other caps. Good morning and thank you for coming. Good to see you again, Prof.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you for the privilege.
Been a minute.
I've been invited here.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have you on, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
So last time was before, the elections in Edo State, and so talking about your foray into politics. So tell us, I know before, during, and after that elections, you had several thoughts and perspectives. Let us into them. What are you thinking?
Well, it's Nigeria's elections, and it's good to understand that. And we are 60 years now, 60 years plus, in trying democracy. So we've had a few elections, and if you want to be very objective, you'll agree that there has been some progress. But we are not yet there. Democracy does not happen overnight. Takes ages. You can even see those countries who profess democracy. You see how it plays out eventually. We just had a beautiful one in the United States of America, and you saw how that democracy turned out. So let's not be too hard on ourselves, but we have huge challenges here to deal with in trying to address the issues of democracy. We are learning, but we're also learning very fast, I must say. But there is a lot of ground to be covered in terms of transparency. The role of the monitor or the umpire of the whole process needs to be a little bit more professional and objective and clear, and prioritize Nigeria's interests. Nigeria wants to grow. Nigeria, we are an inclusive society in our DNA. We like everybody to be fairly and equitably treated. We don't like injustice. We don't like to be told one person is anointed, the other one is disanointed. What played out in Edo was just a manifestation of part of that anointment and disanointment.
So why do you think that we're learning very fast?
I think we're learning because a country like us, 370 ethnic nationalities, fabricated by some alien powers, and called a nation, in 60 years, it's a short time, relatively speaking. Because even those models who have spent 200 years in democracy, today they still have challenges. So what I'm not saying that we have done too well, but I'm saying that we should not be overcritical about ourselves, but we can do better, definitely. But to be able to do that, you have to have an orientation of real independence, that you are who you are, and nobody can define you. But we're still caught between what does the other side, who made us what we are, think. And those ones are very interested in making sure that their own interest is fostered. But when you get there, you tend to forget that your people are your people. And those interests from outside that have been there since 500 years, that they have been with us, have really not changed. They are still pursuing their own interests in different strategies that have been adopted. Today, whatever it takes to keep Nigeria where it is so that it can be ripe for exploitation and maximum subjugation, they will continue to perpetrate such things.
What would you say to those who watch what professionals like yourself do, then you get into politics, because they too might be thinking, should I or not? Will I get my fingers burnt if I made a name for myself? Why should I get into politics? All of those narratives as to, oh no, it's dirty, I can't do this and that because of what they do. And then they see how you turned out, and then they think, maybe I should not. What would you tell those people?
No, Nigeria is ours. We have no other place but here. To sit in your bedroom lamenting and wailing, and for things that are not happening to happen, and you are sitting back doing nothing about it, is a wrong approach. We all must get involved. Lamentation will not solve our problem. Bewailing will not solve our problems. I would encourage colleagues and people in my own class to go into the fray. You will encounter Pontius Pilates all over the place. People who will know you and pretend they don't know you. And they know that when you go there, the narrative will change. But they're scared of that. And they tell you all kinds of stories. So, but we change of the type that will bring about what will benefit our people will not come by sleeping. If Mandela was in prison for 27 years to give independence to South Africa, through democracy to South Africa, majority rule to South Africa. Good governance will not happen overnight. We have to have people who are dedicated, who are committed, who are resilient, going out to fight for what is right. Power is not given, power is taken. Now through the democratic process. Thank you.
I've heard you say a lot of things over the years, and you just mentioned one of them again. The concept that there are people orchestrating things. I remember when you were talking about the Japa syndrome some time ago, and you said it was a conscious effort to destroy our country. And now you said that there are powers that be that, you know, are hell-bent on keeping us where we are so that we can be constantly exploited. Could you expatiate on this a little bit? And who are these powers that
be? As a student of history, I know that international relations is not a love affair. It's about the pursuit, advancement, and projection and defense of your national interest. That's what it's all about. But it's clouded in beautiful language. There's a scholar who said that a fantastic diplomat is one who is able to tell you to jump from 7-story building and you'll be happy doing that. So let us not have any illusion about it. Those who are in charge of Nigeria must prioritize Nigeria's national interests. International relations is about national interests. Collective interests or group interests will come about when you are not thinking about your own national interests first, but others happen. What Trump said in the first time he was there was America first. That was not strange. Every diplomat does that. Every country that is wise must do that. But even if you have done that, you must also take into the collective interests also into account, because you are not an island, and the world is becoming more and more globalized. So the collective interest will also matter for you to be able to project and defend your own national interest. So talking about Africa, our continent, Vasco da Gama came to West Africa in the 15th century. And what is the relationship between us and those countries since then? You have slave trade. From slave trade, we progressed. I don't know whether that's the word to use, but for want of a better word, we came about occupation and colonization. From colonization, there was the Second World War or First World War. You now had other systems that were now introduced, neocolonialism. And the system continues. It's just strategies, really. But I don't blame anybody. If you have leaders who are not thinking of their own selves and of their own interests, then they are not leaders. They're just also serving their own personal interests, prioritizing that over that of the group interest that they're supposed to be representing. So it's nothing unusual about that. But it is a high time that those countries that have been victims of these strategies that have not really helped the continent sit down and reflect about it and do something radically different to change the narrative. The Asians have done better than us. Where was China some years ago? Where is China today?
We have a chief marketing officer of this country, which is our president. And I want you to be able to assess how his marketing strategy of Nigeria is going. He just came back from the finance COP, the money COP that everyone is calling it. What would you make of his marketing strategy of our country, MOUs that have been signed so far, and how we're doing on that scale?
Well, I must say this of the current president. He is the #1 marketer for Nigeria. And he has taken this from the very beginning of his tenure. And I must applaud him for that, because the president of the country is the #1 diplomat of the country. And from the very beginning, he has been to the UAE several times. He's been to, now he's just come back from the G20 and many other things. So he's doing very well in that regards. But as I said, that will be helped. That process will be helped if we professionalize the foreign service.
Oh, sorry.
If we prioritize the foreign service.
Sorry, I made an error. He didn't come back from COP. It was from the G20. COP,
G20,
COP
yes,
was in Azerbaijan. Yes, continue.
So the point I'm making is that as far as marketing the country is concerned, Mr. President, as the #1 diplomat, has done excellently well. But that needs to be complemented by having professionals, diplomats, ambassadors appointed. Because you cannot be in how many countries? There are 194 countries that make up the United Nations. Assuming that these are the only countries that you have relations with. If you don't have ambassadors of your own countries, your own selves, who are physically present 24/7 in those countries, who will implement those things that you are signing and that you are implementing? So I think it's very important. The president has done well, excellently well, by himself being the #1 diplomat, going and marketing Nigeria, but that needs to be complemented by appointing ambassadors who would represent him in the capitals of those countries and follow up on what he is doing in those countries. Otherwise, you go on a visit, you come back, who follows up on and if there's no follow-up, there's no real progress being made.
I think that actually brings me to why I kept saying COP in my head. It's because he was actually at the G20 in Azerbaijan. But let's talk about the COP. And Nigeria, because there was a Nigerian, we were represented at COP29. And the issues that came up, about the financing and this $300 billion. And of course, looking at, because I heard our Nigerian representative really screaming that it was an unreasonable amount. And over the years, we've heard about, these responsibilities that are given to countries like Nigeria that are not really contributing much to the climate change situation. We're not the problem, so to speak. And many African countries and developing countries feel that way. You countries that are contributing the most to this issue, be the ones to pay. In fact, the last vice president of Nigeria actually said categorically, forgive our debts. Let us channel the money of those debts into climate change, projects in our country, as opposed to giving us this burden. What do you make of this situation that came up at the COP, and one that we heard our Nigerian representative vehemently shouting against?
Not just shouting, but rightly so, in my view. But you see, in diplomacy or international relations, you are who you say you are. If you say no, no one can say yes and put it on your head. I would expect us to be more confident, more categorical in projecting and defending what we identify as our national interest. If people know that you are not going to be bent and you are not going to be subservient, no one will try to subjugate you. So I think what the Nigerian delegation represented there was clear and was lucid. We are not the greatest violators of assaulters of climate disaster that is ongoing. We contribute very little in that sense to it, but we are also victims of that process. And we cannot add more burden from outside to our own problems when we have more critical issues of development, of improving ourselves, of even empowering our own people on hand to deal with, and no one is genuinely supporting us in those regards.
So, okay, I was just going through some of this. If I could just go back to the election bits, because I got some people still asking certain things. Now, they want to know, was it, because if they wanted to learn certain lessons before they make that step, we'll still come back to this Tinubu's shot to diplomacy in a bit. But would you, if you had a second chance, change your strategy in terms of how you make your foray into politics? For instance, if you had a critical mass of people and certain things at different phases of your entry, or put it differently, what would you have? Would you have changed your approach if you were to get a second shot at this whole thing?
Well, I'm not very young, as you know, and I don't think I would want to have a second race at 8. But that does not mean that I will not be involved. There are ways you can be involved without being directly involved. But we will encourage and support a system that is transparent and respects the rights of every person to aspire to become a change maker in our country, and not to say that one person is anointed and another one is disanointed. Any system that does that is false. And also, we need to grow a consciousness among our people that our destiny is in our own hands. And if we do not challenge the system, the status quo, it remains there.
Because, you know, I've heard several people say a huge chunk of the challenge we face in this country is about leadership. The kinds of people we elect to be in different places across the country. In fact, the leadership recruitment process, you know, the base being the people themselves. And so if we don't address that, all of these challenges we're talking about, whether the president is visiting somewhere or one governor is doing something somewhere or the petrol price, it's all about leadership. How do we do that? How do we approach that?
Chamberlain, you're absolutely right. Our crisis is, and that's not new. It has always been said, our problem is leadership, really. We have a flawed leadership selection process, which ensures that we are never, and I'm speaking very objective, not just in Nigeria, in the whole continent, we do not put our best foot forward, usually. How come that Nigerians excel so brilliantly out of the shores of this country, but when they are here, they are not even recognized? If you take away Nigerian doctors from Canada, or Nigerian doctors from the United States, or Nigerian doctors from Britain, the health systems of those will face huge challenges. Will they be able to prosper in this country? Why is it difficult? So we have to ensure that our leadership selection process, much as we recognize that leadership is a crisis, make sure that our leadership selection process is in our own hands, not mortgaged, not swindled, not stolen, but it's in our own hands that I vote my conscience and I don't vote for 10. My vote is not bought by somebody. We have to have that. Nemo dat non quam habet. You cannot give what you do not have. If you have a wrong person in a wrong place, and you are praying 24/7, 365 days in a year, you are actually insulting God. Because the choice that God has given you, you have not made the choice. And you are now telling him to do it for you. No, ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you.
What would you say to, because I mean, there's a generation of people in this country who don't remember when they've been so enthused, when they've been so excited and gushing about a president of this country. You know, because I mean, you talked about the last elections in the States. You saw how even though there were different divides, but they were passionate, albeit they were proud of what they did. Yes, I voted there, even though I lost. But at the same time, we see it in African countries too, wherein they vote and then they're happy. Some have young presidents. But our case here, we can do a lot. We can so improve, really improve. So what do you tell those groups of people who just saying, we've lost interest in this entire process? Because you say, don't pray about it, do something about it. But they say, look, we tried last time, twice, we got our fingers burnt.
Why should I try again?
Because you tried once and failed, therefore you should not try again.
3 times. And what if I tried 3 times and failed?
No, I don't believe that satisfies the point. Change, power in history is not given. Power is taken. There's no solution about that. There's no two-way about it. Power is taken. Power is not given. If you do not stand up and you are not resilient and you are not committed and you are not focused and you are not long-termed, you will not get it right.
I hear what you're saying, but I still want to be able to talk about what Chamberlain is saying. Yeah, because you see, the truth is we have disillusioned young people. Millions of disillusioned young people. Yes, maybe some of them may be, you know, in a position where, oh, I did it once, it didn't matter, I'm not going to do this again. But then again, they're looking at a country that hasn't exactly in the past, we have 2 generations at least. Some people think it's 3 generations of Nigerians who haven't exactly enjoyed good governance. They have seen the deterioration of the quality of the lives of their grandparents, their parents, and now themselves. And the struggle to survive in the country. To these people, their stomachs are grumbling. And then we keep telling them, be patriotic, come out and vote, stand up for your rights. But when they do that, they do it the first time, second time, third time. And it does feel like the process doesn't favor them and doesn't care about them. What can we be doing? What can be done about that generation of people?
Change is a constant in life. When you do not accept change, when you give up, then you have given up. But I have a philosophy in life. Some of us have come from not very. You remember? I mean, In those days, you don't have to be a rich person. You don't have to know anybody to get anything done. General Gowon was 32 years old as president of this country. He's 90 now. Many of those people who have been in positions of power in this country have not gone there because everybody wanted them to be there. So why should you, yourself, who has something to offer, not be smart enough to know how to get about what you want, to bring about the positive change that this country needs? So the challenge is us. And when we talk about leadership, we're not just talking about one man. We're talking about leadership across the sectors, the strata of society, including leadership in the family, leadership in the classroom, leadership at the customs post. So I think it's something that we all have to resolve. And a time will come anyway. Change is inevitable. It will happen when it will happen.
Well, the president had just returned from his trip. Then he was again, Nigeria participating in that G20, Group of 20 summit. And he said he struck some deals, as it were. I mean, you've been in the diplomatic circle. How does this work in terms of, because time and again, we see our presidents travel across the world, trying to ensure that they get, I think most of them talk about foreign direct investment and to boost our image abroad. But how do people measure whether or not those trips have been successful?
Well, there are agreements that are signed. There are conversations, bilateral meetings that take place. It opens an opportunity for you. And also when you speak in a forum like the G20, definitely you are in the public, you are in international glare. So that is the purpose of that. It affords you an opportunity in one forum to carry out transactions across the nations or across issues of your own interest, but also of the Nigerian interest. But as I said earlier, and let me just repeat myself, I won't bore you, to say that this will not add up to receive the kind of success that it deserves to achieve if it is not complemented by your own personal envoys in those capital cities of the world that are strategically important to your own country. Those countries have ambassadors resident in Nigeria. And they can see you. Only ambassador can see the president. Any person who is not ambassador who is in an embassy, the highest you can see as a chargé d'affaires is the foreign minister. So it means that for the past 1 year plus, we have not had the president's own personal envoys in those countries around the world. So none of those, those people who are sitting there are chargé d'affaires. They're just in charge of the affairs that are going. And the maximum outreach they can get to from their embassy is the foreign minister. And only the chargé d'affaires can do that. And that is very rare. So who follows up for you in spite of all these efforts you are making to go around the world? You should have your own ambassadors who have access to your colleagues, to your counterparts, who represent and speak for you 24/7 in those countries which we have bilateral and multilateral relations with. That is the point that I will not be tired of making. And so long as that is not done, I'm afraid that these movements and these trips are falling short of what the catalyst that is required to drive their effect.
Do we assume that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be advising the presidency on all of these things?
It's their place to do so. I don't know, I'm no longer there. It's their place to do so, but it's also the president's place to know.
But
really.
While you were there, were there times that you advised and the president didn't?
No, never. In my time, and I speak with great passion about this, 3 years before I came, there were no ambassadors appointed. There was only one ambassador in Nigeria, in the Nigerian Foreign Service. But in my first week there, or in the first few months that I was there, 25 career ambassadors were sent out. And a year or two later, 88 career ambassadors were sent out. And there was none, absolutely none. No way we didn't have an embassy. In fact, we created more missions, not because there was more funding for the mission, but because we were more strategic and calculating in deploying our resources to those places.
Speaking about which, pardon me, what is it that happens? Why is it that a lot of those missions, because I'm sure you must have heard the complaints that Nigerians have, they just treat Nigerians when they come to those missions as though, no, they're always hostile to a lot of them. Why is that the case?
Well, I don't know about hostility. I would be shocked if a career officer would be hostile.
If not the career officer, then the members of staff who are in those missions, they are always hostile to a lot of Nigerians who go to those missions for one thing or the other.
Well, if that is true, then that is unacceptable. Because you as a diplomat, one of the things that you are taught is you are to project, you are to defend and promote the interests of your own country and of the citizens. Protect the citizens, the interests of your citizens resident in those countries. Even if they are wrong, it's not from your mouth that you should hear that they are wrong. You should protect them until you can get them to Nigeria to face justice. So if that is happening, then that is really most
you didn't hear any of such case while you served?
No, not in my time. Definitely really? Not in my time. It will never happen. Because I think, you see, as I keep saying all the time, you cannot give what you do not have. Focus on training and retraining of officers. Professionalize the foreign service. People who are there for 30 years will not behave like those who have failed local government election. And because of that, you want to compensate them, you make them what? It's not the foreign service is a class of its own. And if you do not recognize the sanctity of that profession, then you really shouldn't be there. If it happened in my time, such a person will be seriously dealt with. Because it contradicts the mandate which you are supposed to be promoting and defending.
On the president's outings, there have been at least 3 major ones. Well, he was at 2, were represented at COP. But, 3 major things have happened in the past 1 month. And seeing Nigeria's representation and the president's speaking up at these outings, it's made me to, and listening to you right now, it made me to wonder about our foreign policy direction in Nigeria. Many people have said that we should change our foreign policy direction. And you mentioned it sort of earlier, where you said America first. Many people have said we should start doing Nigeria first. Because I think on paper, Africa is still the centerpiece of our foreign policy. So I want to be able to get your thoughts on our foreign policy drive as a country. Are we Nigeria first? Are we moving in that direction? Or are we still, being diplomatic with our relationships and juxtaposing that with the way the president has, the stands that he took, especially in the Islamic country summits with the G20 summit in Brazil, and of course our outing at COP. Are we pushing Nigeria first?
I would say yes, from his perspective, and even objectively speaking, because Nigeria first is what? Nigeria is Africa's most populous it's the world's most populous black nation. Nigeria, 1 out of every 6 African is a Nigerian. Nigeria occupies a very strategic position on the map. Nigeria is Africa. We've never really been separate from Africa. In our DNA, we are Africans, and no Nigerian will ever like to be not to be called an African. So demographically, and even in terms of resources, we constitute a huge chunk. Economy of West Africa, about 2/3 of it is Nigeria. So we cannot pretend to just be Nigeria in terms of the defined space and territory that we occupy. That is important, but it is not everything. Anything that diminishes any West African country must have implications for Nigeria. Anything that hurts Africa must have a way it hurts Nigeria more than any other country on the continent. So in that sense, Afrocentrism is part of our philosophy, and rightly so, and it's Nigeria's national interest. So Nigeria's national interest must not be viewed in the sense of just in a macro sense, but in that sense in which we occupy the positions that we occupy in the black race and in the African context, geographically speaking.
I know that because I've heard a lot of people also ask this question. When Nigeria travels, president, and then we seek a lot of investors to come back in here. Now, at that level, yes, he's done what he's supposed to do. You've also spoken as to what needs to be done to follow up. But when these companies come in here, there are those who think that there seems to be a lot of, maybe we missed the point, not ensuring that, because if they are even coming into this country, they'll first of all look inwards. How are your local businesses faring? What are they complaining about? Will I thrive if I get in there? So they have been accused, government folks have been accused of saying, look, we don't focus enough on our local industries here. we don't ensure that they have a thriving environment, we're so fixated on bringing this foreign investment. And when they do come in here, if not portfolio investment, they don't even comply largely with the laws we have here. And when that happens, they still get a slap on the wrist. So they think, shouldn't we have perhaps a review of how we seek foreign direct investment into the country?
Well, it's natural for any number one diplomat to canvass for foreign direct investment. So there's nothing unusual about that. But I also agree with you that there needs to be some search, some work to be done domestically to make sure that the appropriate environment is in place, the enabling environment for such foreign investors to flourish when they come here. The situation where we are, our currency, for example, is in its lowest form. Today, we've never had this in history, that the Naira is what it is, 1,740 something in the foreign exchange market. So it's unbelievable. If you want to invest and that is what you are getting, and it's going to discourage investment. So we need to also provide the appropriate evidence. Our security system needs to be beefed up, because people cannot move from one place to another free and securely. That is not very good for foreign direct investment. So one can say many more things, but a forum like this is not an appropriate place to do that. That's really meant for government to hear.
Yeah.
But we need to do work. Nigeria remains one of the best places on earth to invest, if you ask me, because of the resources that are here, because of the market power that is here, and because of the resilience of our people. You cannot lose if you are here, really. You cannot.
Let me take you to two things: membership of UN Security Council and the Group of 20. So I know a lot of water has passed under the bridge ever since those councils were formulated, but we've been seeking membership. So in spite of all this pedigree, what is the stumbling block?
We are our own stumbling block.
Oh.
How so?
Yeah. We are our own stumbling block, I must say. I have a book on this, which was published in 1994, I think, on Nigeria's quest for permanent membership of the Security Council. In global relations, it's not a place for supplicancy. You ask, and it is given to you. Nigeria is a major stakeholder. Let me use a more moderate word. How many peacekeeping missions has the United Nations ever had in Africa without Nigeria's membership? Nigeria is a global peacekeeper, and one of the primary functions of the Security Council is the maintenance of global peace and security. How can a country that has made that contribution since October 7th, when we became the 99th member of the UN Security of the United Nations, we led the first UN peacekeeping force to DRC in Congo. Nigerian police stabilized the situation in Tanganyika, Tanzania. The only president on earth that I know that will tell a coup plotter in another country, get out of that place. The president of that place is in my place. Get out of that place before I get there. And the coup plotter runs away from the state house in his own country. Obasanjo did that.
So are we not asking?
So what I'm saying is this. As government, we need to be consistent, we need to prioritize, and we need to insist. Power is not given, power is taken. I was contesting for a position in the UN at some point. And of course, others don't want it. They didn't want it to happen. At a point, I had to tell the big powers that, some of us, we come from the jungle. We live on trees. But in the jungle, there are rules. And that we need to abide by the rules. I was presiding over that meeting. We need to abide by the rules of the United Nations. In my country, we've restored democracy. The only person who can give me instructions is Yaradua, was the president that time. And no other person on earth can, as ambassador of Nigeria to the United Nations. And that if you do not want us, in good faith, we're not here when the UN was formed. We're colonies. When the San Francisco Charter was signed in October 1945, African countries, there are 55 of them today in the UN. They were all, most of them were colonies. Only one, perhaps, was not. Today, we are 55 countries in the United Nations membership. How can you say that in good faith, after we fought for independence, we came back and joined and signed the charter because we believe that this must be good? But if you are telling us that you don't need us, that we do not have the right to veto, we do not have the right to be permanent member of the Security Council, no blackface among the 5 countries that are permanent members since 1945, when there was only 51 countries there. Today there are 194 countries. So in terms of number, in terms of equity, in terms of geographical representation, in terms of race relations, justice, democracy, where is it in the UN Security Council? So Nigeria should insist, not just beg for. They said, okay, Africans, you people can go and choose whichever one. Who tells that to anybody? They're throwing corn on the floor and telling chickens to share. Doesn't happen.
Did we put ourselves...
Who determined which country became permanent member of the Security Council at the time among the 5? If it was to be done democratically, are you sure that those who are there now will be the ones there? Why are you not using that as a card for us? So what I'm saying is this, that if Africans wake up to the realization that it is unjust, it is not representative, it is not equitable, it is not democratic, that no African country is a permanent member of the Security Council consistently for 79 years since it was incepted, then it will change.
So in winding down, as we wind down on this, did we put ourselves, or did African leaders largely put themselves in that situation also because they keep submitting themselves also to Western powers before elections?
Asking for
asking for validation, or maybe visit to Chatham House or wherever it is that they go to. Are those all part of what happens?
Well,
have we sold ourselves short?
No, I think you can answer that. I think you have answered it.
No, you're the one in that circle.
The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars. It's in ourselves that we are underlings. Your destiny is in your own hands. The day you wake up to the realization that the narrative will change, it will change. But if you insist that you remain the same way that you have been for the past 500 years, so it will be.
Okay, I don't know if that works. Is he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. So I'm just wondering if that, at what point would that apply? Maybe another topic for another day, but always a pleasure to have you on, Prof. Professor Uhomoibhi is former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former Under-Secretary General, UN, and also former President, UN Human Rights Council. Thank you for coming on, and all the best to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. Thank you, my dear sister.
Thank you.
All right, so Business Morning comes up now.